Incredible mom discovers racist attack on 12-year-old daughter, life-changing secret revealed. Elena had always believed that a single mom could balance it all, except on this day, the world she thought she knew shattered into pieces. The sun hung low over their quaint Pennsylvania suburb, casting a warm glow on the tree-lined streets that were usually bursting with laughter and life. But today, a chilling silence filled Elena's home, an echo of joy turned to heartache. Mia, her vibrant, spirited 12-year-old daughter, was supposed to be basking in her after-school freedom, sharing the latest gossip from middle school while decorating cupcakes at the bakery. But instead, when Elena pulled into the driveway, the weight in her chest foreshadowed the storm brewing within her daughter. It was more than just the quiet. It was the kind of silence that could swallow hope whole. When Mia finally spoke, her voice quivered like fragile glass. "Mom, they called me names," she whispered, tears blocking her view like a storm cloud threatening to pour. Elena felt her heart constrict. Through clenched teeth, Mia recounted an attack that felt ripped from the pages of history, a racially charged assault in a community that had prided itself on its values of acceptance. No, not like this, Elena thought, a wave of rage shoving against her brave facade. The air crackled around them, and within moments, news of the attack rippled through their tight-knit suburb. Neighbors brought casseroles and words of support, but they were mere band-aids on a wound too deep to heal with empty gestures. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Every well-meaning voice began to blend into a dull roar, but then one local leader, a man of perceived respect, had the audacity to downplay Mia's experience as just kids being kids. Elena's resilience turned to fury. She couldn't be quiet, not anymore. With her heart pounding like a war drum, she sought the wisdom of Mr. Thompson, her elderly neighbor, who understood the depths of injustice on a personal level. Through Mr. Thompson's tales of bravery faced in the past, Elena found her own strength. He shared stories that intertwined dignity and resilience, each word igniting a fire within her. She envisioned a world where Mia could thrive freely, without fear. As the community planned a meeting to confront the issues at hand, Elena's resolve crystallized. She felt the weight of history on her shoulders, guiding her toward action. But the tension during that meeting was palpable. Steering through hostility was like maneuvering through a storm at sea. Would she have the courage to seek accountability and change, as she stood facing the very individuals who had attacked her daughter and the apathetic leaders who remained silent? Elena's vision pivoted. With a powerful declaration, she shared a family secret. Her grandmother had fought against social injustices, carrying the same legacy of courage now flowing through Elena and Mia. With those words, the atmosphere shifted. In a world where silence had reigned, voices began to rise. But was this enough to spark understanding and change? Would the past relent? As hope battled against doubt, one thing was clear: Elena's fight was just beginning, and the path toward justice would be rugged and treacherous. Would she have what it took to ignite a transformation, or would the shadows of division? Elena stood before the gathering, her heart racing at the palpable tension in the room. Eyes of anger and disbelief mirrored her own. She felt the weight of her family's history, a tapestry of struggle and triumph, unfurling around her like a shield. But the challenge was real. Whispers of dissent and defensiveness rippled through the crowd. Would they rally behind her, or would they retreat to their comforts, fearful of confronting the ugly truth? The atmosphere was thick as she locked eyes with Mia, who sat at the front, a mix of hope and fear painted across her young face. Her daughter had suffered in silence, and suddenly, Elena felt the urge to shield her from the harsh reality of the world. Yet she knew Mia needed to see strength, not just in her mother but in the community as well. "I won't fail you," Elena promised silently, a vow etched deep within her heart. "Enough is enough." Her voice boomed, breaking through the murmurs. "Today, we stand for what is right. We don't accept these horrors in silence. The room stilled, hanging on her words. You may have turned your backs before, but our children deserve better. They have a right to grow up free from hate and fear. She felt the surge of energy rise around her, the crackling charge of revolution brewing in the air in the corner. Mr. Thompson nodded, his face a mix of pride and encouragement. Elena took a deep breath, then continued. We are more than just a community, we are a family. If we fail to protect the most vulnerable among us, then we have failed as people. We owe it to Mia and every child like her to confront this darkness together. Her voice rang with determination, echoing off the walls meant to shield them from the outside world. A hand shot up from the back, trembling but resolute. It belonged to Sarah, a soft-spoken mother from Mia's school. I didn't realize it was this serious. I thought it was just kids being kids, you know. The honesty in her admission resonated, igniting murmurs of agreement around the room. Elena sensed a shift, a stirring of collective consciousness finally breaking surface. That's the first step, Elena urged, encouraged by Sarah's courage. Let us not dismiss our children's pain. They are teaching us to listen, to truly see. And with that, Elena felt a space opening for dialogue. Other parents began recalling moments when their children had been brushed aside, instances of bias that were often ignored. Each story added fuel to the fire that Elena had ignited, yet, just as hope began to swell, the unthinkable happened. A group from the back bristled. Their leader, a man known for his vocal opinions on community matters, stood up, shaking his head. But what about our community values? This will tear us apart. We can't go digging up past grievances. His voice dripped with outrage, but it was the undertone of fear that struck Elena hardest. Deep down, he knew change required stepping out of comfort. Maybe that's exactly what we need, she challenged, adrenaline pushing her forward. Change is hard, and it's terrifying. But hiding won't protect our children. It'll only strengthen the walls around hate. The room held its breath, waiting, hearts pounding as raw honesty filled the air. That moment, something shifted. The walls, once heavy and immovable, started to crack. People turned to each other, both in confrontation and solidarity. Conversations popped up here and there, like sparks in dry grass. A movement was beginning, but was it enough to overcome years of complacency? As discussion swelled around her, Elena felt the momentum build, the tide of transformation not far off. What might this community look like if they pushed through their fears together? Would they have the courage to break the cycle of silence, the weight of her past and the promise of a brighter future pressed against her heart? Just as hope flickered and expanded, a buzzer sounded from the back of the room, jolting everyone into silence. The unexpected visitor stood there, a tall figure cloaked in shadows, a stranger to most but familiar in a way that sent a ripple of unease through the gathering. What news did he bring? Would he be another voice of dissent, or could he be the key to unlocking the change they so desperately needed? The figure stepped forward, the room still buzzing with anticipation. Elena squinted, trying to make out familiar features. Instinctively, her heart raced. Only a handful were brave enough to stand against the wave of sentiments that filled the air, and she needed to know quickly whether this newcomer would divide them further or bring them together. Excuse me, everyone. The stranger's voice, though slightly shaky, cut through the noise. It had a certain weight, drawing everyone's attention like a magnet. I'm Jacob. I know things about this community that others won't speak of. The sharp inhale of a few attendees echoed in the silence. Curiosity mixed with fear. Things about our kids, our families. Jacob's gaze swept across the room, landing on Mia. Things that some have suffered in silence. I've seen it happen firsthand. The air felt electric. Elena's thoughts raced, a whirlwind of possibilities. Was he here to share more horrors, or was he prepared to lay bare truths that might unite them? Please, be brave enough to listen, he urged, sensing the tension. I promise you, it's time for the truth. With a steadying breath, Jacob stepped further into the light, revealing a haunted look in his eyes. Last week, I overheard something chilling. A group of boys laughing about how they bullied a girl who's only 12. With each word, the heavy burden of silence descended, pushing against their hearts. Don't think it's just kids being kids. This girl was Mia. Gasps erupted, a wave of distress rippling across the room. Elena felt like she had been hit with a punch in the gut. An all-too-familiar fury and protectiveness surged through her, but she had to keep her calm. She couldn't let this moment slip away. Tell us more, Jacob, she urged, her voice steady despite the tempest inside. They set her apart because of her skin color, calling her a freak, telling her to go back to where she came from, Jacob continued, fervor igniting his words. But it's worse than that. They dared each other to see just how far they could go. Murmurs of disbelief rose, but Elena held on to their attention. What did they do? She pressed, desperation clawing at her throat. She needed clarity to urge the community into action. They made her feel less than human, Jacob replied, his voice thick with anger for her pain. But the worst part? Those watching, many stood by. They laughed, some even cheered. It's a cycle deeply woven into the fabric of our days. A surge of disbelief and anger struck the crowd. Elena felt an urgency rise within her, the vision of a united front beginning to crystallize at the mention of their children. We cannot let this continue. She shouted, her voice ringing with conviction. We must be the ones to stop this. But even as she spoke those words, doubt crept in. Could they really confront the ugly realities of their community? Would they support Mia and each other enough to stand strong against this tide of hate? Then, with the crowd visibly shaken, a voice rose from the back. It was Mr. Thompson, his face a portrait of concern. What should we do? How can we change this? It's not just about talking anymore. The tension in the room danced with uncertainty. Elena felt the weight of expectations resting on her shoulders in this moment. She needed to offer hope. We start by supporting our children, holding each other accountable, she declared, her eyes scanning the crowd for even a flicker of agreement. We stand together, protectively. We invite dialogue. That is how we can forge real relationships. In the midst of this powerful moment, Jacob's gaze met Elena's. There was a glimmer of understanding shared between them, a pact forming that transcended the heartache. She recognized that he might be a key ally in their quest for change. Just as the tension began to shift, the door swung wide open again. Another figure stepped in, wide-eyed and visibly shaken. What new revelation would they bring? Would these added voices amplify their message, or would they fracture it further? The room fell into a hushed silence, all eyes darting to the open door. The newcomer, a young girl with tangled hair and tear-stained cheeks, hovered just inside the threshold, her eyes wide with terror. Elena's heart skipped a beat. What had brought this girl to them? Ella, Jacob breathed, recognition flashing in his eyes. What happened? Ella took a hesitant step forward, her small frame trembling. I saw what they did to Mia. I thought I could stop them, but I was scared. Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her face. I didn't want to be next. But you're here now, Elena said softly, drawing closer. She instinctively reached out, her hands comforting on Ella's shoulders. You don't need to be afraid anymore. Can you tell us what you saw? The girl swallowed hard. They chased her, called her names like animal and ugly. I thought it was just a joke at first, but they pushed her down. I felt like I should do something, but everyone else laughed. I just froze. Anger washed over Elena like a wave crashing against the shore. She could feel the shift in the room as the parents pressed forward, their expressions transforming from shock to determination. Jacob's jaw clenched tightly, frustration evident on his face. But that was wrong, shouted Mr. Thompson, his voice rising with fervor. How could they treat another human being like that? What do we tell our kids? Elena turned to the crowd, her hands motioning for their attention. We teach them to do better. She exclaimed, her voice steady and strong. Starting with us, each one of us has to be a part of the solution. We can't let this hatred stay hidden. We need to stand with Mia, with Ella, and with every single child who feels alone or attacked. Ella wiped her tears, looking up at Elena with a glimmer of hope. Will it really change? She asked, her voice small yet hopeful. It will if we make sure it does, Elena affirmed, her eyes fierce. But we have to act together. We can't turn our backs this time. The murmurs of agreement surged through the room, and for the first time, Elena could see a spark of unity beginning to ignite. People were shifting, nodding, ready to challenge the weight of the silence that had held them prisoner for too long. Just as the collective energy was rising, an elderly voice broke through the budding excitement. And what about those boys? Mrs. Ramirez asked, her frail frame trembling with resolve. What happens to them? How do we hold them accountable? Elena felt the room tense again. They should face consequences, but we also have a chance to reach them. Maybe they don't even understand the harm they've caused, she responded thoughtfully. That's why we need dialogue. We can show them a different way. A man at the back raised his hand, his brow furrowed in concern. But what if they don't listen? What if they just keep hurting others? Elena took a deep breath, letting the question hang, feeling the gravity of it. That's why we'll need to build a support system. We can mentor our kids and educate them, but we need to help those boys see their actions have consequences that ripple through our community. Just then, the door swung open again, and in walked three teenagers, their faces a mixture of anger and regret. They paused, staring at Elena, Jacob, and the now crowded room. The atmosphere shifted again, thick with anticipation as everyone turned toward them. I heard what they did. One of the boys finally broke the silence, his voice reluctant but heavy. And it's not okay. We want to tell you why. Questions hummed in the air. What did they mean? Why had they come? Elena's heart raced anew, sensing that they were on the cusp of something monumental. Would this be a moment of truth or further conflict? The next step lay uncharted before them, teetering on the edge of promise or peril. Would these boys join their cause, or would the darkness return once more? The room was thick with anticipation. The air crackled as the three boys shifted nervously on their feet. Elena could see the flicker of regret in their eyes, a glimmer of something deeper beneath the shame. She exchanged a worried glance with Jacob. Neither of them knew what to expect from this moment but knew it could tip the balance in either direction. We messed up, the boy who had spoken first stammered. It was just supposed to be a joke. He ran a hand through his short hair, eyes cast downward. But I didn't think about how it would feel for her. Elena felt a tight knot in her stomach. It would be too easy to lash out, to let her anger spill forth. But she bit her tongue, choosing instead to listen. What you did was more than a joke. You hurt someone, she said, her words calm but firm. What happened to Mia cannot be swept away with excuses. You need to understand the impact of your actions. The boy nodded, shame flooding his features. I get it. We were stupid. All of us were laughing. We thought it was funny, and I was. I was too afraid to say anything when he stopped, swallowing hard. His friends flanked him, their faces equally remorseful. I've been thinking about it, about Mia, another boy chimed in, his voice shaky. She didn't deserve that. No one does. I just wish I could take it back. I wish I could tell her that we're sorry. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of disbelief and cautious optimism. The parents exchanged hesitant glances, unsure whether this was a genuine turning point or just words offered in desperation. What else do you have to say? Elena pressed gently. You need to show all of us, that you understand why it's important to apologize. Suddenly, the third teen stepped forward, desperation etched on his face. We want to help. We want to make things right, he declared, urgency coloring his words. If we could talk to Mia, if we could learn how to do better, we'd be willing to stand up with you all. Elena's heart swelled but also ached. This was a pivotal moment, one that could seem like forgiveness but also risked undermining Mia's trauma. It's not just about talking to her. It's about changing the way you think. You need to genuinely want to do better, she urged, meeting each boy's gaze. This isn't just about one mistake. It's about you becoming better people. So, are you ready to commit to that? The boys nodded, determination flickering in their eyes. They spoke in hesitant agreement, repeating words of commitment and sincerity. Elena felt the atmosphere around her shift, a mix of tension and hope, the kind of uncertainty that somehow felt alive. The parents, intrigued but cautious, began to murmur among themselves, weighing the boys' sincerity, eager yet frightened to embrace this potential turn of events. But then Mrs. Ramirez charged back into the conversation, her voice trembling but strong. Words are just words if there are no actions behind them. How can we trust that you'll follow through? The room fell silent again, the weight of her question heavy and palpable, leaving paths unexplored. Elena's heart raced. It was difficult to know if this was the turning point they needed or just the start of a long journey forward. She turned her eyes toward the boys, waiting for an answer. Would they be able to rise to the occasion? With every heartbeat, she felt the stakes climbing higher. What would their next moves be? And just then, the shaky ring of a phone sounded, breaking through the tension, a reminder that this moment, heavy with potential, was only part of an unfolding reality. Who was calling? And how would it shake their resolve? The ringing phone seemed to echo throughout the room, cutting through the fragile air of hope. Elena looked at the boys, their faces suddenly strained. The uncertainty that had just begun to dissipate rushed back in, heavy and oppressive. She could see the question flickering in their eyes. Was this call about to derange everything they had been trying to build? Someone reached for the phone, and Mrs. Ramirez's face twisted into concern. With a heavy sigh, she stepped out of the room to take the call, leaving an unspoken tension in her wake. Every second felt like a small eternity. Elena glanced at Jacob. What do you think it is? She whispered, her voice barely audible, thick with concern. Not sure, maybe it's about Mia, he replied softly. His face mirrored her apprehension. Meanwhile, the three boys stood in a tight formation, their expressions rigid. The first boy tapped his foot, a nervous rhythm to complement the rising tension. What if they say something that makes it worse? He muttered. Fear had crept back into his voice, and Elena could see the flicker of doubt spark in the others too. We need to show them we're serious, the second boy blurted out, desperate to shake off the anxiety. If we wait here doing nothing, they'll think we're just playing games. Elena nodded, suddenly feeling a surge of determination. Okay, let us show them. But let us be clear, words aren't going to be enough. You need to mean every single one of them. The third boy straightened, a glimmer of resolve settling on his face. Right, he said, swallowing hard. Let us come up with a plan. Something real. We can gather some support, maybe organize an event at school, something to raise awareness. Elena watched as they began to brainstorm, the boys speaking over each other with growing excitement. Ideas bounced around, a palpable energy igniting their earlier remorse. They were transforming that guilt into something productive, and she hoped more than anything it would resonate with Mia when the time came. Just then, Mrs. Ramirez returned to the room, her expression grave. The chatter hushed immediately. Mia is going to the hospital, she said, words taut and heavy as they landed in the room. She's in shock, the school called. Her voice trembled slightly. Elena's heart sank. Hospital. The word hit her like a punch in the gut. This wasn't just a prank gone wrong. This was turning into something much deeper and darker. Is she stable? Mrs. Ramirez cut in, though her eyes were clouded with unshed tears. But she needs support. She is scared. An uncomfortable silence settled over them, the gravity of the situation replacing the earlier sense of hope. The boys exchanged worried glances, the realization hitting them like a cold wave. That should be us there. We should be there for her, the first boy said, voice barely above a whisper. It was as if they had suddenly been thrust into the heart of it all, knowing they could have made a real difference, and the truth of their inaction weighing them down. Elena felt a fire bubbling in her chest. Then let us go to her, she declared, resolve flaring. She needs people who care. Who are willing to stand by her. But then, another thought pierced her mind. What if we're too late? What if she doesn't want to see us? The fear mixed with her determination, igniting a storm inside her. As they began making plans, they all shared that trek into the unknown. Unity was their strongest weapon, but the path ahead was dark and unfamiliar. Would they find the courage to confront Mia? And would their words carry the weight to heal wounds deeper than they could imagine? The thought lingered, igniting worries as they prepared to step into the world of consequences they had set in motion. The car ride to the hospital felt like a blur. Elena squeezed Jacob's hand tightly, as if that contact could replace the fear growing in her chest. The boys were silent, each lost in thoughts too heavy to voice. The rhythmic bump of the tires on the road did little to drown out the heaviness in the air. It wasn't just Mia, it was all the moments that led to this. They had laughed off bullying, brushed aside the whispers of gossip, thinking it would all be fine if they didn't engage. But it hadn't been fine. Do you think she'll even want to see us? Asked the boy in the back seat, his voice shaky and uncertain. The question hung like a thick fog, and even Elena had trouble answering. I hope so, she finally said, her voice small. She needs to know we care. That we're here for her. Jacob glanced in the rearview mirror. Look, we can't control what she feels right now. But we can at least show up, right? That's something. His words were supposed to offer comfort, but they also felt like a weight on Elena's heart. What if they saw her, and her eyes were full of hurt and anger? What if they were too late? As they pulled into the hospital parking lot, a knot of anxiety twisted inside her. They stepped out onto the pavement, the stark fluorescent lights hitting their faces. It felt unreal. The building loomed above them, sterile and foreboding. Elena took a deep breath, tasting the starkness in the air. Let us just keep it simple. We tell her we're sorry. That we want to support her no matter what. With each step, her mind raced back to the times they rolled their eyes, when Mia had come to them with her worries and fears. They hadn't taken them seriously. Reaching the hospital entrance, they hesitated. The heavy doors slid open, revealing a waiting room filled with a mix of anxious faces and sterile walls. The sense of time shifted, every heartbeat felt amplified. Where do we go? One of the boys asked, looking around nervously. Elena spotted a nurse at the front desk. Excuse me, she started, her voice wavering slightly. We're here to see Mia Ramirez. The nurse glanced up, her expression softening. Room 302. You can head up, but just a heads up, she may be a bit fragile right now. Fragile. The word struck Elena like a thunderbolt. They followed the signs, moving deeper into the building's shadowy corridors. Each step felt heavier than the last as dread clung to them. Finally reaching the room, Elena paused outside the door. She glanced back at Jacob and the boys. Are we ready? A series of nods responded, though they all seemed to hold a hint of uncertainty. Elena pushed the door open, and the sight before her tore at her heart. Mia lay on the hospital bed, her small figure dwarfed by the crisp white sheets. Everything about her seemed so vulnerable. Mia, Elena breathed, stepping inside cautiously. The room was quiet, save for the soft beeping of the heart monitor. Mia looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, Elena saw a flicker of recognition, then it faded, replaced by something darker. What are you doing here? Mia's voice was barely above a whisper, laced with hurt. Because we care. We want to fix this, Elena replied, her voice trembling. Mia frowned, her emotions shifting as quickly as a spring storm. Fix what? It's too late for that. Elena's heart sank at the pain hanging in those words. Would Mia let them in? As they stood there, the reality of their inaction crashed like a tidal wave. Could they even help after what had happened? In that moment, Elena realized the fight wasn't just for Mia, it was also for themselves. Just listen to us, please, Jacob spoke up, urgency woven into his plea. But would Mia take that step to forgive? The weight of a second chance pressed down on all of them, threatening to erase any hope of healing. And as they stood together at the door of healing, they couldn't help but wonder, what if the battle for Mia's trust was the hardest one yet? Mia's gaze dropped to her hands, which lay limply on the sheets. It was as if she was trying to withdraw even further into herself. The silence felt vicious, wrapping tightly around them, making every second stretch into eternity. Elena's heart raced as she searched for the right words, her throat dry, her mind spinning like a trapped bird. Mia, we know things have been rough, Elena started, her voice wavering. She hesitated. This wasn't just about words, it was about rebuilding what they had broken. Rough? Mia's head snapped up, anger flickering in her eyes. Is that what you call it? You think it's just rough? She winced as she shifted in bed, pain flashing across her face. Elena's breath hitched, feeling the sting of Mia's voice like a slap. I know it's worse than that, she white-knuckled her own emotions, fighting to keep her tears at bay. We're here because we can't ignore it anymore. We want to make things right. Mia scoffed lightly, pain laced into her expression. Right? You think that's possible? You all turned your backs when I needed you most. Why should I trust you now? Her words cut like glass, and Elena felt the weight of each syllable in her chest. Jacob stepped in, attempting to soften the moment. Mia, we were wrong. We should have stood by you. Please let us try. Let us show you we care. He stepped closer, sincerity etched in his features. The boys stood silent, expressions frozen in shock, feeling the thick tension that filled the room. Elena noticed her friends' pained expressions mirrored her own. They had all failed Mia, but now it was time to fight back. I don't need your pity, Mia responded, a tremor in her voice. Tears glistened in her eyes, her strength wavering. I need friends, not apologies. Elena felt the stir of renewed determination. Then let us be those friends, even if it's hard, she implored, tears finally free. You are worth fighting for, Mia. We didn't see it then, but we do now. Mia's expression softened slightly. The vulnerability seeped through, revealing layers of hurt they hadn't comprehended before. You really mean that? Her voice was barely a whisper, but for the first time, the spark of hope flickered in her eyes. Absolutely, Jacob replied, and the other boys nodded vigorously. We'll be here, through everything. Mia leaned back, uncertainty blending with curiosity in her gaze. What if you fail again? What if you end up choosing the easy way out? Elena took a breath, feeling the gravity of the moment. That may happen, but we're willing to fight for you, the friend we didn't appreciate before. We just want to learn how to support you, Mia. Mia's contemplative silence stretched, the weight of her emotions dancing in the air. Then, she turned her eyes towards the window, gazing at a world beyond the sterile room. Okay, she finally said, her voice laced with hesitation. But it won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is, Jacob replied, his warm smile attempting to pierce the darkness. Elena felt a crack of hope blossom inside her, as small as it was fragile. Perhaps this was the first step toward healing, not just for Mia, but for all of them. Can you give us a chance? Elena asked gently, her heart racing with cautious optimism. Mia gave a faint nod, her walls still up but the tiniest chink forming. But just then, the door creaked open, and a nurse stepped inside, disrupting the moment. Mia, time for your medication," she said kindly but efficiently. As the nurse moved around, Mia's expression hardened again, a flicker of vulnerability extinguished. Elena felt her stomach twist. Had they made any real progress? Saying their goodbyes, Elena lingered, locking eyes with Mia. "We'll be back. This is just the beginning," she promised as they turned to leave, stealing glances over her shoulder, and as they exited the room, a chilling thought wrapped around Elena's mind. What would they face next? Would Mia let them in as they hoped, or were they still on shaky ground? The battle for Mia's trust had just begun, and they were far from finished. As they stepped out of the hospital room, the heavy air seemed to follow them. Elena exchanged worried glances with Jacob and the others. Each of them was lost in their thoughts, processing Mia's words and the tense silence that had filled the space. They had reached a turning point, but the path ahead felt fraught with uncertainty. The fluorescent lights of the hospital flickered above as they made their way down the corridor. Jacob broke the silence first. "What do we do now?" His question hung in the air, equal parts anxiety and hope. Elena shrugged lightly, biting her lower lip. "We just keep trying, right? We have to show her we're serious." "Easier said than done," whispered Mark, glancing back at Mia's closed door. "What if she pushes us away again?" Elena felt frustration bubble up. "We can't let that scare us. We were wrong before. We owe it to her to be there, even if it gets messy." The tireless ticking of the clock in the hallway echoed their collective uncertainty. Miles away, Mia lay in that stark room, feeling alone despite their promises. Had they truly wrought enough change for her to take a chance on them? Elena could feel the weight of doubt creeping in. They decided to regroup at Elena's house. It felt like the right place to gather their thoughts. The moment they settled on the couch, Elena felt a surge of energy among her friends. It almost felt like a battle plan was in the making. They were more than mere acquaintances now, they were allies. Elena paced the small living room, her mind racing. "Okay, what about weekly check-ins? Like a support group but way less formal. It could be all of us together, working to lighten her load." "And how do we get her to open up?" Jacob challenged. "We can't force her to talk." "Maybe we don't have to," Mark suggested slowly. "What if we share our own stories? Times we've felt left out or let down. It might show her she isn't alone." Elena stopped in her tracks. "That's a brilliant idea. If she sees that we struggle too, maybe it'll break down some walls." They brainstormed late into the night, each suggestion building their purpose. They laughed about their own awkward moments. Tales of embarrassing failures that had once made them feel small now became symbols of resilience. The warmth of their camaraderie ignited Elena's spirit, fueling her determination to help Mia. Later that week, the time came for their first group meeting in the hospital lobby. With the boys waiting nervously, Elena entered Mia's room. The sight before her took her breath away. Mia was nestled against the pillows, eyes shimmering with a hint of curiosity and trepidation. "Hey, Mia," Elena started, her voice soft yet steady. "We're all here and we want to share some things. We thought it might help to be open." Mia's expression shifted. She hesitated. "You really don't have to, please," Jacob interrupted gently. "We want to support you. It's not about pity. It's about being real together." Mia glanced at each of them, assessing those faces once more. The walls she had built were still there, but now, they felt less daunting. Chocolate chip cookies sat in a basket near the window, a comforting reminder of shared smiles from simpler times. "Might as well start with something sweet," Mia mumbled, a flicker of humor breaking through. Elena breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe this was the beginning. The hope of a real connection swelled in the air. But just then, the door swung open again, revealing an unfamiliar figure, a tall woman with fierce eyes and an air of importance. "I'm here for Mia," she said, a sharp tone in her voice. Elena's heart sank. Who was this, And what impact would she have on Mia's fragile recovery? As the woman stepped inside, Elena felt the air thicken with uncertainty. Would this disrupt everything they had just begun? The battle for Mia's trust was far from over, and now a new challenge was emerging. Elena stepped back, the unfamiliar woman's presence sending a jolt of tension through the room. The woman's steely eyes scanned Mia and the gathered friends before landing on Elena with an intensely scrutinizing gaze. "Mia, I'm here to speak with you about the incident and how we can move forward," the woman stated firmly. Her voice dripped with authority, leaving little room for hesitation. Mia shifted in her bed, unease radiating from her small frame. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the bravado of earlier moments disappearing. "I'm Mrs. Anderson, the new principal. I want to support you, but I need to hear your story," the woman replied, her tone softening just a fraction. "It's essential that we hold everyone accountable, not just the ones who hurt you but also ourselves." Elena's heart raced. Accountability. That word hung heavily in the air, echoing the very thing she and the boys had been fighting for. It felt like a turning point, a potential bridge between Mia's pain and their intentions. "Mia, it's okay to talk to her," Elena encouraged gently, trying to instill confidence in her daughter. "This is an opportunity." Mia's expression was a mixture of uncertainty and hope. "But what if they don't listen? What if it doesn't change anything?" "I promise we'll listen," Mrs. Anderson interjected, her eyes sincere. "I'm not here to add to your pain. I want to ensure this never happens again for you or anyone else." Jacob exchanged glances with the boys, a hint of determination sparking between them. "Mia," he said, stepping closer. "You have the chance to make a difference not just for yourself, but for everyone else who has been hurt." A heavy silence settled, but slowly, Mia nodded. "Okay." Her voice quavered, but there was a flicker of bravery showing through. As the conversation unfolded, something beautiful began to take shape. Elena watched as Mia opened up for the first time, sharing her experience without holding back. Mrs. Anderson listened intently, taking notes and showing genuine care, proving her intentions were aligned with Mia's healing journey. Meanwhile, Elena and Jacob exchanged looks of encouragement with the boys. This was the change they had longed for, gaining traction right before them. It was that exact moment when they noticed the air around them shift. It was no longer crushing, it felt vibrant, charged with possibility. Mrs. Anderson turned to the boys after Mia's story had been shared, their faces ghostly pale. "You boys had a hand in this too, right? It's time you confront your actions and decide the kind of people you want to be." "You're right," the first boy admitted, eyes wide with guilt but determination. "We can't just walk away anymore. We need to help and stand with everyone." A mixture of courage and vulnerability enveloped the room as the gravity of the situation shifted. Each person present was woven into a new tapestry, supporters, friends, and allies in this shared battle against hate and ignorance. Elena felt her heart swell with pride for Mia, Jacob, and the boys. "Together, we can build something new," she urged. "We can't erase the past, but we can learn and grow stronger." As the faces around her lit with resolve, hope blossomed like spring flowers breaking through the cold earth. This was the beginning of a transformation, not just for Mia, but for the entire community. Days turned into weeks, and together, they began organizing workshops and dialogues at schools, inviting everyone to participate. The community gradually opened up to the conversations that once sat in silence. Elena felt in every heartbeat, every tear, and every shared laughter that they were not just building a better environment for Mia but forging a new path for all their children. The fight against what had been a silent epidemic of hatred faded, leaving in its wake a culture of caring and respect that in the end, that quiet, sunlit Pennsylvania suburb thrived with life again, a community evolving together. It took courage, compassion, and unwavering support to rise above, but they had done it. For Mia, she blossomed into a strong, fearless young woman whose voice echoed with courage. She became a beacon of hope to others who felt alone, proving that love could conquer hate. Elena cherished the moment when one day, watching her daughter embrace her friends, she knew this transformative journey was just the start. They had become warriors of light, reshaping the world around them one story at a time, and now, as you reflect on this journey, it's your time to act. You need to subscribe now to catch more powerful stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm so others can find this light. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about Mia's unbelievable transformation. Your voice matters. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support is what fuels stories like this.